To do a review, well, on the Acebeam K75. So, to begin, it's the Acebeam K75, and this is what it looks like coming out of the box. I did an unboxing a while ago. It's been about since that unboxing that I've been using it. So, I got some talking points written down for the rest of my reviews. That's what I'm going to follow. I did a K30 unboxing or review. Anyway, K30 GT, I want to do an update on that too. Anyway, this is the X80 GT and a little size comparison. So, realistically, this thing's bottom half here is basically an X80 GT. It's basically the same size and whatnot. I would say the K75, might be slightly bigger in dimensions. It might be slightly thicker, but I don't know. It's about, just feels that way because it's so top heavy. It's a top heavy flashlight, guys. It has got a lot of weight up here. A little bit more than expected, so it's more heavy this way than you expect. That's why the handle's designed this way, so you can hold it up here, take a lot of the stress off of your wrist. There's a really nice roll stop. Move this guy out of the way. There's a nice roll stop. It has a lot of good features. There's not much I hate about this flashlight. It is one of my favorite flashlights, and you're going to hear that from me a lot because all I buy is flashlights that I know are going to be my favorite at something someday. So beginning with the size and shape and dimensions. Okay, this is a one-handed searchlight. It seems like it would be a two-handed searchlight, but it's not. It's small enough you don't need two hands. Can't say the same about HID flashlights. You can't say the same about the MS-18, MS-12 by Amulet, and you can't say the same thing about the GT series. Although the BLF GT lights are almost twice the weight of this thing, significantly longer, of course, and have a much larger head, between about half of an inch, which is actually substantial when you consider that that's going all the way around the head. Is a lot of extra size to an inch. The new BLF GT 94 is way bigger and heavier than this. Okay, so the weight is less than those lights. I'm not going to weigh this thing by the gram scale, at least not yet. I don't think it's necessary. The weight that they have for their product is probably pretty accurate. They say 843 grams without batteries, so it actually weighs less than a kilogram without batteries. Probably weighs about a kilogram with batteries. Okay, it takes 4 18650s, so that's moving on from size. Obviously, you can see the shape is very tapered. We don't have to worry about putting it in our pocket or anything, so the shape isn't really of too much concern. This kind of helps level out the shape. Okay, it will balance on its. This is included with the flashlight. It's very important to tell you what it includes. Of course, it doesn't include a holster. Acebeam makes a smaller flashlight known as the K75 GT. The K65 GT does come with a holster, believe it or not, and it's holsterable. It's a holsterable searchlight. This is a non-holsterable searchlight, but it's still a one-handed searchlight. Okay, very nice. There's nothing wrong with not having a holster for a ridiculously huge light to holster. Overall, it's not a big light. It's just it would be too big to use a holster with. So the battery type and size, of course, is 18650s, protected or button top. It will not work with flat tops because the battery cage springs are too short for flat tops. However, if you add any kind of plate, I would recommend you add a small solid steel plate, 1 or 2 millimeters thick on the negative side, and you don't have to do anything. You could just put it on the battery and then put the battery on the spring, and the spring should be strong enough to hold that in place. I don't recommend doing that on the negative contact, because then it will involve stuff that you don't want to involve. So you would want to just put that on the negative contacts. As kind of a non-permanent modification if you really had to, because you're using flat tops. It's just the size of flat tops. Okay, in fact, if you had flat top protected cells, they would work because they'd be long enough. I just don't want you to use anything other than the Acebeam batteries, so they kind of design it around those. They are a little bit expensive at $15 a piece. They use a Sony VTC6 chemistry core capable of 30 amps. They reduce the amperage capability to 20 amps as a safety measure, and they monitor it at 20 amps for a long time, so it has 30 seconds or longer at 20 amps. Sony VTC6 is not more capable than the batteries they use for Acebeam batteries. It's an identical chemistry, and during my research I found that I believe Sony is paid royalties for the chemistry Acebeam uses in the batteries. I'm not sure if they actually use Sony's or what they do, but they're very good at 20 amp cells. They're the only 20 amp protected cell on the market today. So that's the battery type size, and layout, of course, is 4 in a battery cage. I showed you in the unboxing what that looks like. So lumens max sustain minimum. The maximum luminous flux is 6,300. I believe that's at the LED, not out the front. It doesn't say that it's out the front. It says FL1 standard. That's not the same as ANSI. So that doesn't mean FL1 standard doesn't necessarily mean that it's out the front. It does say later ANSI NEMA standard for the Acebeam batteries for runtimes, but it doesn't say ANSI standard luminous output. It also says maximum output, not. So the instantaneous max output out the front might be 6300s, and within a few seconds that might drop down. So at the 30 seconds you normally measure it at is not 6300. That being said, I don't have a flashlight that's anywhere near 6000 lumens that looks anywhere near as bright as this. So I would contest that anyone who thinks this isn't 6300 lumens looks at it with their eyes and tells me, does this look dimmer than an MSRD4 putting out 5000 lumens? Probably not. Does this look dimmer than the 7000 lumen? Flashlight, you know, any 7 or 8000 lumen flashlight you have that doesn't have any throw to it, this will look brighter. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So saying this isn't 6300 lumens is neither here nor there. And I'll have a video up about the 8th myth called brightness myths shortly. In any case, the maximum sustainable output. Okay, for 2 hours and 15 minutes, the high mode puts out 2500 lumens without there being much variance. And me using a high mode with other ambient light indoors and outdoors just for tests and for fun, I haven't noticed that to be fictitious. That 2 hours to 15 minutes is probably a little underestimated. It's probably more like 2.5 hours or so. And that 2500 lumens, man, it's pretty solid. So the maximum sustainable, over 2500 lumens. There's been some comments that it goes down to like 2000. I suppose that's possible. I might not be able to tell that just with my eyes and the way I test it. It is known that the Eco Turbo comes down. Now, in their literature, they actually have some more graphs, but those are based on laboratory tests, so they're not they're not with flowing. There's negatives and positives to those. They might inflate the results, but they also might compress the results a little bit. The results might be better, actually, in real use than holding the flashlight and not having any fans on it. In any case, 3000 lumens for the turbo and eco mode, 2500 lumens for the high and power mode. We're going through the user interface now. We'll come back to Candela because that's kind of the main point of this flashlight. The next setting is 1700 lumens in eco modes high. The mid 2 in the power setting is 1250 lumens. The mid 2 in the eco setting is only 600 lumens. The mid 1 in the power setting is 350 lumens. And finally, the mid 1 in the eco mode is 250 lumens. That ends the differences between the two mode groups, and we'll talk about those mode groups more later. The low setting for both mode groups is 150 lumens. It has a claimed 27-hour runtime, which I haven't really tested that much, but I can tell you that the low doesn't seem to take much energy out of the flashlight when I use the low mode. It's a very nice low mode, and it's a very consistent low mode. I can tell you that it doesn't shelf. That low mode stays exactly the same, which is also probably true with the mid 1, the mid 2, and the high. I don't know why the mid 2 is 1250 and the high is 2500. I don't know why they do that, and it's not just 1000 and 2000. I think that would make more sense. But I do like the high being just about the high and power mode group is just about that even maximum sustain output. So that's really nice. In any case, and finally you have the ultra low. At both settings is 7 lumens, and the strobe in both settings is 3000 lumens. Okay, and of course you can see all that right here. All right. It says 1 meter drop test, and it says 2 meters underwater, so it's a claimed IPX8. You know, I would not recommend submerging this underwater on purpose. It's just a very large flashlight, and there's any inconsistencies and water can get through it, but I wouldn't worry about it either. You know, I've run it in heavy snow and nothing happened. Okay. It takes a lot of attention to tighten this up all the way, so you want to make sure it's tightening all the way so it's not that O-ring isn't slipping out anywhere. You want to grease the O-rings. I use super lube. I want to make sure those O-rings stay nice for you. Now the flashlight's main selling point, of course, is its Candela. So its Candela optics and ratio and beam pattern are all pretty simple. Alright, it has a maximum of 1,560,000 Candela. And it has, as you can see on this camera, a very, very flat, nice circle. There is a small donut hole effect close up when the flashlight isn't very far away. Okay, but once you're further away, I'm going to go ahead and step up and move back. Getting to about there. There's no more donut hole. That's the camera, guys. There's no more donut hole. Okay? But there's more and more corona. Okay? And the further you go back, the more corona you have, but also the spot doesn't change size for like 50 meters because the divergence is very slow. Okay? So it's 50 meters before you see the spot get much bigger than the surface of this flashlight. Okay. User interface, of course, is a simple click on and click off. Okay, you click it on, you hold it to go from modes 3, 4 mode and back, and it circles back to the bottom mode. To access turbo at any time, you turbo by double clicking. From off, double click, click it off, double click to turbo, and you can hold it down and it always goes back to the 150 lumen setting. So even if I'm up here and then I turbo, brings it all the way down to 150 lumens when you hold it down. Okay, click off. from off. This is the only way to access the ultra low. You hold it down until it turns on ultra low. Now, if you continue to hold it down, and I'm not going to demonstrate for a reason, I'll explain at another time, some other time, guys. When you hold it down all the way, all right, wait for it to turn on ultra low. You continue to hold it down until the ultra low flashes, and then it turns off. Now it's locked out, and that's a locked out mode. You then press the switch 10 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how I like to do it. And it will change from the power to the eco mode. It always comes, to my understanding, it always comes in eco mode. They test the flashlights, they change them to eco mode, and make sure they send them out in eco mode. Don't change it to power mode. It seems great at first. It is great, it is powerful, and it's fun. But it's not that useful. And if you're going to use this for actual searching, it makes more sense to use eco, because the 3000 lumens lasts for a few minutes, okay, about 3-4 minutes before it heats up enough to go down, and it only goes down to about 2500, 2400 lumens, okay? And it might go down to around 2000 depending on the ambient environment. High humidity, low altitude is what you want for the longest run times at the turbo settings, okay? The turbo and power mode will never last longer than I think it's 30 seconds, but it might be a minute. Okay, it will never last longer than that because it's timed, and then it also has a temperature sensitivity. It is possible to defeat the temperature sensitivity by turning it directly on to turbo from off, and by unlatching the batteries and putting the batteries back, and then turning it on, because the temperature sensor always takes about 10 to 20 seconds to sense the average temperature, which means you can break this by abusing turbo, so I recommend against that. And on that note, I recommend power mode only be used if you're like a flashlight enthusiast and you're using this more for fun than you are for use, like yours truly. In any case, so that turbo mode really melts this LED, and it uses it. This is a 3000 lumen LED, so turbo is overdriving it by double. That's abusive. Okay, that's going to reduce your total life of the LED by about 10% or so per hour. Now again, it only runs for a couple minutes at a time. So to get an hour, you have to get brand new batteries like 60 times before you've even run it for an hour. And then that's only reducing your life by 10%. But think about that. Each time that happens, you're going from 50,000 hours to 45,000 hours to 40,000 hours. Eventually, you're going to run this thing down to the point where it only has about, 5,000 hours of use. If you exclusively ran it on that, of course, it would reduce the runtime, to just several hours. Okay, if that's all you did. If all you did is run turbo, you'd have probably a total of maybe 100, maybe 1,000 hours or so on this thing. Okay, maybe 100 hours or so on that overdriven mode. At 3,000 lumens, you should have a good 20 or 30,000 hours of life, which is ridiculous, right? Well, that's how LEDs work. Okay, and it's more complicated than that. I don't know all the details, and I don't want to, bother you with all the details. Okay, but 1.5 million Candela is too much unless you're in the military or you need an infinite amount of Candela because you're searching and rescuing for people. And even in that instance, you want the eco setting, because that 700,000, a little bit less than 700,000 Candela for a longer time is much more useful than 1,500,000 Candela for a few minutes. Okay, for really just like I forget if it's 2 minutes, 1 minute, or like 30 seconds, but whatever it is, it crashes pretty quickly. It seems unproportionate. It seems like the high takes at least 15 or 20 minutes to heat this thing up, and the turbo instantly, within 30 seconds to a minute, warms it up. I believe the LED is doing something funny with temperature, and when you get to really high temperatures, this thing, really high outputs, this thing's temperature goes up much faster than moderate outputs, which is interesting. It's fascinating to me. And when you find this thing in real use, you'll notice that. I don't know if it has anything to do with the heat transferability, the metal that they use, the anodization they use, or anything like that. Compared to other flashlights I own, it's just that the turbo on this thing just ramps it up much faster than the other settings. Compared to the X80 GT, or 1000 lumens, and even my LR40R and some of my other searchlights, 1000 lumens on this heats it up pretty rapidly. Okay, about 5 minutes and it's warm. But this thing, no, it takes, the 2500 lumens takes like 15 or 20 minutes to warm it up. Okay, so I feel like the LED runs unproportionately hot when it's being overdriven to 6000 lumens. Okay, so, but just talking about intermittent use and regulation, what I want this channel to be focused on is what a lot of people don't do, which is real life usage. And so, like I said, I think most of these stats are pretty good, pretty true to the way I've used it. I've mostly used it in medium 1 and medium 2 modes when I do run it for a long time. And 5 hours on medium 2, I mean, that's absurd. I will tell you this: I almost never see this go red when I'm using it for something that I need it for. When I'm experimenting with it and maxing it out and racking it right in a turbo and having a lot of fun with it, it melts the battery a little bit faster, but most of the time, this thing stays green for a long time. I mean, part of the thing is it's really only running one LED, so it really doesn't need that much power. And you know, having 12,000 milliamp hours worth of 4, 3,000 milliamp hour LEDs, I mean, it just doesn't run that power down that fast. In eco mode, you can actually run 4 3,500 milliamp hour LEDs. Okay, and it'll have over 4,400 watt hours, 4,400 watt hour, whatever it is. You have a lot of watt hours, more or the same as 321-700s that have 4,800 milliamp hours. So it's really not bad. You get a lot of watt hour power, and you can still run the turbo just fine with like four of those Phoenix 3500s, or the best ones are the 3600 milliamp hour that Claris sells. The only issue with those, of course, is that Claris, those run all the way down to 2.7 volts, and this won't drain batteries that low. I think it gets down to just below 3 volts, and then it cuts it off. Okay, which is mostly a good thing. I mean, especially the ultra low. You don't want that. Like, on one hand, yeah, ultra low can run the batteries down. It's not that big of a deal to run the batteries below 3 volts on 7 lumens, but in reality, that's how you explode batteries, is running them for a long time on absurdly low settings that are unrealistic, okay, to use. In any case, but moving on, so it's mostly flat regulation. Okay, all of these modes are going to be flat. The only modes that aren't are the high and power. They sometimes go below 2500 due to heat. The eco and turbo, which definitely goes below 3000 lumens once it warms up enough. And of course the turbo and power doesn't last very long, all due to heat. All three of those due to heat. Okay, I don't think it energy cuts down stuff. I haven't seen anything like that yet. I'll let you know if I do on a long-term review. It doesn't seem to. And again, this thing is never going red. It glows green, and then it glows red, and then it flashes red briefly before it runs out of power. I will say that you'll probably never see it flashing red, because the only way to do that is to run like the low or the ultra low mode for like literally days, where you get a whole 27 hours, so you get more than a full day of continuous low mode use. Even if you use it for 4 hours on high and medium 2, you're still looking at like 10 hours at low mode before you run it all the way down. You can even see the color red on this. Okay, I have seen red on it, but only when I'm running the high setting. Once I turn it down to low mode or whatever, it's no longer red, because the voltage dips back up. In any case, all that's pretty incredible. But to be honest, I think the bread and butter of this light's its efficiency. with its throw. This thing throws approximately, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but in the Candela and optics, the beam pattern, okay, this thing throws approximately 275 candelas per lumen. Okay, well, ultra low doesn't measure, they don't give you the candela rating, but they do give you 40,000 candela at 150 lumens. Okay, or 100,000 candela at 400 lumens, or 99,000 at 380. 100,000 at 400 lumens, right? So divide that out, and it's about 275 candelas per lumen. So that's a lot of energy. Okay, a lot of energy. I guess the best one, let's see, what's the best one? 70,000 at 250. I don't know. 40,000 at 150. Go down to 100 and you see about 27,000. Okay, because you're losing, well, you'd be losing 50%, so it'd be 30,000. 30,000 candela at 100 lumens, right? No, you're losing a third. And you're losing a third of 40,000. Not a half. What am I saying? So a third of 40,000 is like, it reduces it to like 27,000. Because what goes into 40 3 times? You know. Because like 8 times 3 is like 36. 9 times 3 is, what am I saying? 8 times 4 is, 4 is 36. What? 32. What am I talking about? I don't even know. All I know is it's around 100. It's around 250 candelas per lumen. Just leave me alone, guys. All right. What does that mean? That means you have like literally over 1,000 candela at 7 lumens, which is insane. Okay, it's an insane amount of power. This right here is more intense than most of the flashlights in the world. Okay, if you include all the Walmart flashlights, all the low-tier $6 flashlights that are out there, this 1,000 candela is more intensity than pretty much everything in the world, which is crazy. It's 7 lumens, and it's more intense than most of the flashlights out there. Okay, it's as intense as this thing can get. Okay, this thing gets to like 3,000 or 4,000 candela. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Alright. So see this? It's hard to see this, but well, I'm too close. Problem is, you're not going to be able to see it on camera because you have to get far away where divergence starts to happen. Up close, this thing's much more intense. Because it doesn't have enough time for the small optic, because this is a big optic, this is small. So obviously if I point them right in front of me, this one will be more intense than this one. You know, even the 1200 lumen on this will look way brighter than this one's 1200 lumens, just because the optic is so tiny. But once you get 60 meters out, the 7 lumen low mode on this thing keeps up with this thing's 1200 lumen mode. It sounds crazy, but it's true. It is crazy. It's absolutely true. So, very, very impressive stuff. I'm going to move on. We only have a couple more things before we mention the small details. So Ingress Protection. So of course I covered that. I covered its water resistance and drop tests. I've cleaned it. I've never seen any liquid in the thread, so I'm not really worried about its water resistance. I will say that a lot of cheap spotlights out there are not like IPX6. They're like IPX5 or worse, and they're not really rainproof. This gets you out of that kind of garbage. This gets you into something that's really, really rain and weatherproof, and you can drop it in puddles and waters and stuff, and it shouldn't have any kind of issues. The position standing. So, features of the flashlight. It's pretty important. This thing is fully featured, so you can tell that it's on when it's pointed straight down. Okay? You have really nice roll stops. They're a little little bit better when you have this on here, but when you don't have this on here, the roll stops stop it. Even with it unbalanced, even leaning it towards the handle unbalanced, it still goes back to where its roll stop is. That's a strong roll stop. They're really well designed. That's the roll stop right there. Okay, so that's what stops this thing when you set it on its side, is this piece of the roll stop right there. Alright, I do wish the tail cap had a matching roll stop, but I understand them cutting costs and not designing it that way. Okay, and then finally, of course, the flashlight tail stands. Okay, and without a lanyard, the tail stand, it comes with the Acebeam lanyard. I made this myself because it's nicer for me. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's a really solid tail stand. It's not going anywhere. Those are really nice tail stand. Okay, and then you can prop it up like this. Alright, now it isn't USB rechargeable. Okay, I mean, what Searchlight is, you know, I mean, that would be crazy. And it doesn't have a recharge port or anything like that. I don't think it needs one. I'd rather recharge my flashlights instantly than wait 30 minutes or even longer, like a couple of hours, you know, for it to recharge. And a lot of, like the MS-18, like it doesn't even take like 30 minutes. It takes like a few hours to charge that thing. And that's too much time. Okay, I don't need to be waiting for hours for my flashlight to be used. Okay, I'd rather just use it immediately than have to wait, you know, 30 minutes or an hour or a couple of hours, you know. To use the flashlight. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put this together on here. And I'll show you one more thing that I can do, because this is pretty cool. So if you're hunting, or even if you're target practice shooting or something like that, you can get a red setting too, so it doesn't bother animals as much. The red setting is pretty powerful. The red setting gives you a good amount of lumens, considering that it's red. Okay, but of course it doesn't compete with this one. But you can actually look at this. I actually set up on a tripod. Okay, so it has a pretty nice solid tripod hole, right? And this might not be the world's best. The paper's getting in the way too. This might not be the world's best tripod here, but it does. It kind of works. It kind of works. It kind of does the job. It's fallen down. Okay, this isn't the weight of the flashlight. This is the abilities of this tripod cannot be underestimated. Let me try this again. Let's see if we can do this. All right, there we go. So there it is. Okay, see if we can look at our chicken. So we can kind of look at our chicken. We can look at our box. I don't know why it falls, guys. This is just too much weight for it. Look at that. It reflects off. This is how bright this is. It's reflecting off of the table. Look at that. It's not pointed. It pointed at the table, and it has a second hotspot. That's crazy. Anyway, so you can definitely tripod mount it. Okay, so tripod mount is definitely a go for this guy. And I'm not going to put the handle back on. Okay, I actually prefer it without the handle. And I'll show you why. The balance of this thing is a little bit steep. So it actually does slightly better if you take that off so that you can hold it right here. And holding it right here is really comfortable. And then you can balance it. And actually, it feels a little bit more balanced because instead of this being used to hold the balance upright, this actually itself weighs a little bit. Not much, but the problem is it forces your hand down on the body when you're holding it. So it's better, it does better without that. So I also think it looks slightly cooler without it. Whatever, you know. It's a pretty neat flashlight when it doesn't have that on, or does or doesn't matter. It has a nice hot symbol right here. Not that that matters to anyone on Earth, but yeah, I don't know. I've seen hot symbols that were not exaggerated enough. Okay, it does get pretty hot. Okay, it does get hot enough that you need to be careful touching the head of the flashlight. Around here mostly is where it gets hot. Okay, up towards here it's not hot, and that probably isn't all that warm either. Wrapping it up. It'll be another Trail Trek length video. I love Trail Trek. I love his videos. So that's pretty much everything. The intended use I've already kind of covered. It's mostly hunting. It has some things: mountaineering, hunting, camping, first aid, construction, adventure. I don't know what first aid is, if they're talking about search and rescue or what, but I did make a nice optic for it. So normally it's like that, but I can actually apply this, and what happens is it makes it way floodier. Okay, see that? And I do that by putting this is from a gallon of water. Okay, it's a really good way. It works better on smaller flashlights, but with this big one it's more important because this is such a throwy flashlight. And it gives you kind of a goat's eye optic. You know, kind of a goat's eye beam pattern. You know, it's kind of wide. You know, it actually makes a circle when you point it in front of you. You know, because normally a circular beam stretches like that, but because it's wide, it levels out to a circle in front of me. So actually, I think I should make this into a real flashlight and then, like, you know, publish it and make some money. In any case, it's pretty cool. The green on the green there is a really nice green. Okay. I don't know what comes through on your screen or my computer, whatever, but it's a very nice green. And it's a nice red when it turns red. It almost never turns red because let's face it, you're never going to run this stuff down until after the first time you run it. First time you grab this, you're going to hit turbo a bunch of times, you're going to really beat it up. But the second time, even when you hit turbo a few times, you're going to be nowhere near red. Okay? Anyways, position standing. It's not like the X80 GT. It's not like a lot of other searchlights I have that are really high output. 30,000 lumens really melts those batteries. But 6,000 lumens, as bright as it is, with 4 18650s, it's efficient, man. It doesn't care. It doesn't get even close, man. It takes forever to run through power. Okay? So that finishes off intended use. I think police and military could use this flashlight, and I'm not impressed that they don't. The finish and tactile feel and touch is great. It really fits in the hand pretty well. I think that they could have used hand grip here, just like this. They could have made it more grippy. And the other thing is it's so forward heavy, I think that they could have made a longer tube. So they could have had a longer tube, battery tube, which also could have helped even longer run times, just as an option. Okay, I like this most of the time. When I'm pushing it and I'm deciding whether or not to take this, I would definitely not take a longer tube, but it'd be nice as an option. And then this thing, is uncomfortable. The edges and whatnot get to your hand. This isn't very ergonomic. I hardly call this a handle, guys. So I recommend athletic tape going around this. Maybe even a couple of wooden pencils or something, and then athletic tape just to keep it rounder. I don't know. Something. Gotta do something. This does have a 90-degree post for a mount, so you can actually mount this if you would like, if you so choose. You can actually mount this flashlight this way too, if you want, if you have a binoculars mount or something. I don't know. I don't know. Plus it's angled. You put this on this way, so I don't know how well balanced that would be. Whatever, guys. This thing's not very ergonomic. Ergonomics is the next one, and then you know, the finish. The finish is great. It didn't come with any scratches. This right here isn't a scratch. This is something else scratched onto it, and that's what I've noticed. Is metal and plastic on this like to get scratched onto it, but this will actually clean off. Okay, so I've noticed that for the most part the finish hasn't scratched that much, but it's kind of hard to clean. That might be some light scratching. I'm not sure. It's always hard to tell because metal scratches onto it, and then it's hard to clean it off. And it's hard to tell. But eventually, like when I first got it, I had this big ass gash scratch all the way across it. But I figured out that it actually scratched the thing, and anodization so hard it scratched the metal. I have some dents and dibbles in there now, but it came without any problems. Let's see, illumination details, tint shift, colored lens adaptation, adaptability. You know, you can't have a colored lens on this large of a flashlight. It comes in a red mode too if you want a red LED instead. That's the two choices for now. What's SPT90 red? Okay, I think on their website they showed a Oslon red, so I don't know, maybe that was a different flashlight. Okay, illumination details, you know, the CRI of the SPT90 Gen 2 varies a lot. This is going to be one of the lower CRI ones because it's a much bluer tint. They vary from about 4400K to, which is what this is. That's the highest, that's the bluest it gets, down to about a 3800K. And the other thing is a lot of the SPT90s, they're probably only like 65 CRI or so. That would be my rough approximation. Okay, probably only 65 to 80 CRI, somewhere in there. I really have no idea. You can probably look that up. It's probably not particularly high. I don't think there's no way it's higher than 80, and there's no way it's lower than 65. So somewhere in there. Okay, and finally the anti-reflective coating, other kinds of details, you know. There's really not many more details. That's about it for this flashlight, guys. The anti-reflective coating is pretty good. If I look at the camera's LED. Let's see if we can get that camera LED out to shine back at itself. It's hard to. But that's that bright right there. But that's... Oh, I don't know. The camera LED is so efficient that most of its light is reflecting off of it. Okay, but if I use my overhead light, which I use for other stuff, you could see it there. You'll just have to take my word for it. That's really good. That's really rather good. Okay, one way you can do this is by looking at it. Here, let's see if I can't center this a little bit better. Okay. By looking at it and then curving it up until it reflects more percent wise. Okay, and we see 100%. We bring it back down. Okay, that's almost 100% right there. Okay, but when we take it down to here, where it's bouncing perpendicular, it's very, very, very dim. So it's a pretty good anti-reflective coating, and I'm sure it's coated on the inside too, just to boost performance a bit. In any case, so it's really quite an excellent flashlight. I can't say enough good things about it. It traded some size and capability to be a little bit more concise, a little bit lighter, more friendly to use. I've held this in one hand for more than an hour without switching hands, without a problem with the, that was with this. I did switch positions. I went from holding this, God, it actually holds this way. I went from holding this to holding the flashlight to holding the head to holding this again, but I never switched hands. Got my other hand was occupied holding my, holding something else. So that's that. Okay, I highly recommend it. There's not much, it still doesn't really have a whole lot of direct competition. There are lights that are using SPT90s that are much larger than this, and there are lights that are much smaller. But there aren't a whole lot of lights that are like exactly this size. Okay, it's kind of a new size. It's similar to the K70, which is from way back in the day, like 7 years ago. Similar in size to that. It is a little bit bigger than that. It's quite a bit of a step up from the K75 GT. Of course, the little K30 GT, which is smaller, has a smaller head than the X80. So I mean, it's, you know, it's a really, it's as small as the X80. Anyways, it's a really small flashlight for what you get and what it looks like on camera. I mean, on camera you could see that this light is HM61R is almost as tall as the optic, but in real life it's smaller. Okay, don't complain to me if you go out and you buy it and it's smaller in real life than you thought it would be, or if it's bigger and whatnot. Like, that's your fault, man. You know the dimensions. The dimensions it states are fairly accurate, and that's it, man. That's it for this guy. It's a pretty excellent device. Highly recommend it.